What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. My name is Chris, and I'm joined by two of the greats in this industry, Jurg and Dame. Fellas, how are we this week?
Doing good. Not too busy of a sports week. It's outside of basketball yesterday. Very late news. Busy on the fantasy fronts. A lot of moves were made in the fantasy front yesterday. Tell you that much. Yesterday was a busy day.
Oh, teasing the people for the eventual fantasy football update episode we'll have on this pod at some point. I'm just dandy, Chris. You know, it's all right. The weather's a lot better now after we had like a torrential downpour this past weekend. So it's sunny outside. That's about the best I could say. But I will say this: I do appreciate, as always, doing this podcast, the best sports podcast out there in the sports media landscape today. And overall, I just always appreciate getting to do a podcast with you two, because one thing I can always trust with the both of you is that I get to work with two professionals on this podcast, unlike some people in other walks of life who are completely unprofessional and are not good at their job. So I appreciate you both are actually good at what you do.
Well, I guess I'll take that compliment, Jurg, because you have a lot of steam to blow off today, because a certain trade happened yesterday out of nowhere regarding two NBA teams. That's right. We're finally going to be having some NBA talk. That'll be the main event, of course. A blockbuster trade that came out of nowhere involving a player that has been in the trade rumors for, basically all summer. That should have been traded a while ago, but we decided to shadow ban him from the podcast because just shit was not getting done regarding him, and he was being annoying about it. But mega blockbuster superstar trade in the NBA that we'll talk about. Yeah, Damian Lillard to the Milwaukee BUCKS. Just absurd. So we'll talk about that last. First and foremost, we're going to talk about, like we have the last 2 weeks, NFL Week 3 has now come and gone. We're just going to be talking about the more notable games here and basically what the season's going to look like for certain teams because of their records so far. I mean, is after week 4 is when teams start getting buys?
Yeah.
Week 5 is the first week of buys. I know Seahawks have it and the Buccaneers have.
Mm-hmm. How would you guys feel if you had like a bye week early on? Like, would you rather have it earlier in the season or like late in the season? What would you guys prefer?
Personally, I'd rather have it towards the end. Just because if I'm a good team, I'd rather just have it towards the end, because say it's like week 12, like you played 11 weeks, then you have like a week break before you hit that last stride before the playoffs. If you have it early, like say a week 5, like you're playing football from like week 6 to hypothetically week 20. If you go like through the playoffs, like that's a lot to go on your body without like having any break. So I'd personally rather have it like towards the end, if not like week 10 or something like that, like week 14, 13, something like that. Just have a little break before hitting that last stretch into the playoffs, because obviously it's a physical game. It beats up your body. So you'd rather be as fresh as possible going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with Dame. I think me personally, I think a middle of the season bye week is like the most preferential one. Like I'm thinking anywhere from 9 to 12, somewhere there, because at that point you've already played a good chunk of your schedule. Even if it's week 9 at the earliest, you've played 8 games up to that point, and you still have like 9 left to go. Like I think that's a decent for the halfway point, and I think it keeps you ready and rested for the back half of the season. But I think middle of the season is the point. Like it's like Dame said, you get a bye week 5. Like I think if there's one thing we could say for Seattle, that's a bit of an unlucky break for them. That they've kind of had a decent start to the season that might be pretty good if they can finish off 3-1 here in their first 4 games, but that team going through the next 12 weeks of football, then after that, it's going to take their toll. Like football is all about being a war of attrition, and how do you win a war of attrition? It's not who gets it's not how you start. It's about how you're able to finish, and getting an early bye week it can kill some teams.
For sure. Okay, so let's talk about some notable games this past week. Let's start off with the Chargers-Vikings. The Chargers win 28-24. Fellas, this was, I think, the most important game of the week last week, and the Chargers end up winning. Fellas, actually, the Vikings were about to win. This came down to like the final drive. The Vikings were literally right there at the end zone, and then, of course, turnover. I think, was it deflected, or did Kirk Cousins throw an actual pick?
No, the receiver dropped it. It hit both his hands. He dropped it, and it like ricocheted to a pick.
There you go. So the receiver drops it, turns into a pick. Chargers win by the skin of their teeth. So the Chargers end up surviving this season as they go 1-2 and the Vikings go 0-3. Fellas, oh man, what a game. We expected this game to kind of, be back and forth. It was going to be important for both teams, obviously, because, I mean, you start off 0-3, you're basically cooked. I think for the Chargers, 0-3 means worse for them as it would be for the Vikings. I mean, you're ass regardless, but when you're in division like with the Kansas City Chiefs and like you're kind of like playing for the wild card most of the time, doesn't look good. But they're 1-2, they stay alive, and I'm looking at the schedule now for week 4, and the Chargers have the Raiders here. Jimmy G, I believe, is he officially out with a concussion or no?
I haven't seen that he's like officially out, but I don't think he's going to be playing.
Okay. So, I mean, look, this is a division rival. This should be a game to win for the Chargers, but I don't know anymore. I don't know because some big news from the Chargers camp. No Mike Williams for the season. He's out. That's a huge loss for them. So, obviously, Palmer, Quentin Johnston, they're going to get a lot more touches. Obviously, Keenan Allen's had a great season so far. I don't know if Austin Eckler's coming back. I know he came back to practice, but I mean that like they won last week, but like that was a huge loss, Mike Williams, man. So that sucks for them. I don't know what's gonna go. I don't know what's gonna happen with the Chargers. I think Herbert's good enough to make something out of nothing. And I'm not saying he has nothing, but he could make. I think he has the ability to make gems out of some wide receivers that that obviously aren't on Mike Williams' level, but yeah, they go 1-2. I think if you beat the Raiders, that's huge because that's a division rival. You're at 500 there. For the Vikings, 0-3, fellas, their season, it's looking bleak. It's getting gray outside. It's getting dark outside, and I don't know, man. This is gonna intensify the Kirk Cousins trade rumors. It might be a little too early in the season, but that's life, and I think the person who's more frustrated about this would probably be Justin Jefferson, man. Like when you to tell a young wide receiver superstar, a young superstar wide receiver that the season's kind of clipped. Like, what if they embrace the rebuild? Like that's a year off his career, who's just literally arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. To tell him it's like, yo, bro, it might be clipped this season. It's gonna be hard on him, man. But man, I don't feel for the Vikings. I don't give a fuck. But it's gonna be an uphill climb, man. It's gonna be an uphill climb. So they play the Panthers this week. You know what? Start off with a W here. I think Bryce Young is back. If you could beat the Panthers, go 1-3, slowly, get your way back into the top or at least the respectable portion of your division. I don't know. I think this is a good start to kind of rehab the season to go against the Panthers, but it is looking kind of bleak because 0-3, man, not ideal at all in the slightest. And as I look at week 5, let me see if they could build upon something. Nope, they play the Chiefs. So they're looking at a possible 1-4 start. I say that this Panthers game is a must win for them. And then obviously the Chiefs are not favored, but hopefully, you can do something. Just pray, right? So I don't know. Obviously this sucks for the Vikings, but for the Chargers, huge win for them. Jurg, let me start off with you. What'd you make of the result here, and what'd you make of the game? And obviously, what'd you make of the Mike Williams news, and how do you think the Chargers will go forward looking for like a possible weapon maybe?
It honestly didn't surprise me at the end of the day, the kind of game we got, because you're talking about a Los Angeles Chargers team that it just say what you want about Austin Eckler, but if he's not in the lineup, it is notorious that they struggle without him. So the Chargers were just going to be having to rely on throwing the football and needing to try to be as creative as possible with their play calling, which has, is a challenge to say the very least, considering what the start of the season has been. But they were able to do that. Minnesota Vikings, even though Alexander Mattison finally had a really good game this season, I think he had a little over 90 yards on 20 carries. So that's 4.5 per carry. I think if my mental mark scheme is correct there, like that's not bad. You'll take 4.5 yards per carry out of your running back ultimately, but this was going to be a shootout. Like this is going to be a gunslinging game from both sides. I think Herbert and Cousins combined for nearly 100 passing attempts between the two of them. And ultimately, it was going. I thought this beforehand. I don't know if I said this in this exact way on the show last week, but I think it ultimately, or maybe Dame actually said it, but it was going to come down to who had the ball last for an offensive drive and whose defense was going to step up. And the Chargers were able to take a lead, and multiple times the Minnesota Vikings had the opportunity in the red zone to take that game, and it completely fizzled out. It was a turnover on downs to end the first one. Brendan Staley makes the complete, totally 300 IQ way to go on a 4th and short in your own territory when
Good God, man.
you like come on now for people, not going to get to it. Save it for later. But ultimately, that was a bad choice. The Vikings get close field. Field position matters, I think, more than what we realize in like on a game by game basis. And the Vikings again, right there. And Kirk Cousins throws a pass to TJ Hawkinson, who, yes, he was covered on the play, but I think TJ Hawkinson should have still been able to come down. In fact, this is one of the top 6, 7 tight ends in the game. Maybe some people would say top 5. Like, this is one of the better tight ends in the game of football today. Should have came down with that one. Slips out of his hands, like David mentioned. It hits off one defender, too, and then the last Chargers player, it may have been Kenneth Murray who caught it. He basically had to dive to catch it before it hit the ground. So, ultimately, an escape win for the Chargers. Like you said, big victory for them in the AFC. Now coming up against a game with the Raiders with Jimmy G still in concussion protocol as of the last update that we know of. Even though I think the backup is it's not Jarrett Stidham. No, it's Brian. Isn't Brian Hoare the backup in Vegas?
I'll take a look.
Yeah, they went because I could be wrong. Maybe he went somewhere else, but they went basically full in on the whole that we're going to be New England on the West Coast type deal. And great, that's working great for you. So I fully expect the Chargers should be able to win this game, and especially no Chandler Jones as well. That's a situation, but I think this was big for the Chargers. They can get this next win here. They'll be 2-2, and 2-2 is a good thing for LA considering what the first couple weeks of the season was for them. But Mike Williams, the loss. I think the loss with Mike Williams is going to be felt later on in the season. The games like this that against the Raiders that we call like, oh, you should win this game. It helps to have Mike Williams, but it shouldn't be the reason you lose this game. You're still more talented on the offensive side. Then again, the top skill position weapon is technically on the Vegas Raiders side of the field. But Keenan Allen is still a good player. You have Quentin Johnson, who I think this is the time for him to break out on that Chargers team and to really step up for that first-round pedigree that you drafted him at. This is people have been upset that the first 3 weeks they didn't really find a way to use him. Hey, you're the number 2 guy in this offense now, basically. So I think this is big for the Chargers from that perspective. From the Vikings side of things, it's like you said, they have the game against the Panthers. Bryce Young is on track to come back, but he's coming off of an injury that he's only sitting out a week and a half for. You should win this game if you're Minnesota. But
could be a trap game, Jurg.
Hey, my Panthers, baby, come on, let's go. But you have this
That'd
game.
be a W for you if they beat the Vikings.
Oh my God, I would not stop. I would not shut up for a month. But ultimately, for the Vikings, even with this win, you mentioned they have the Chiefs game. Then after the Chiefs is the Bears. So there's your second free win. And then they have the 49ers after the Bears game. So if you win the 2 games you're expected to win, you're going to start out 2-5 on the season if you're Minnesota. I think it might be done for them.
It's dark outside.
Hey, big guy, sun's getting real low. It's not looking good for Minnesota at this point. Oh, and my bad, I forgot the point you had mentioned. I don't know who the Chargers could really go after for a trade necessarily.
Would they? Do you think they would?
No, because Tom Telesco hasn't shown that he's willing to do that during season. Here's the thing. With general managers, you can tell by their track record if they might be willing to go for a trade mid-season at the deadline. I don't think Tom Telesco, look at all the big acquisitions the Chargers have had the last 2 or 3 years. Almost always it's the offseason. I don't think they're going to make a trade mid-season for anyone, especially because I think Mike Williams still has at least another year or 2. I think they're going to go down the path of, we lost him this year, we'll get him back next season, he'll be fine next season. Quentin Johnson, this is your time to shine. And again, maybe Quentin Johnson, if they're going to go after somebody for skill position, they need I know Austin Eckler is going to be coming back, but maybe a better second running back. Cam Akers just got traded for a 5th. You're telling me you can't find a decent running back for a 5th, 6th round pick? You need something there because good Lord, I thought their backup running back, Justin Jackson, was at least solid. No, that running game is bad, man. That running game is not good in any way.
Last week I mentioned on the episode how I thought this was the most important game of the week. And the reason being, both these teams obviously 2-0. Both these teams are supposed to be competitive and have playoff aspirations, and going 0-3. Not that it makes it impossible. It makes it nearly impossible to make the playoffs. Definitely to win your division. It's not going to happen if you start 0-3. And I mean, this game came down to the end, like you mentioned. The Chargers just, I'm not going to blame this on Justin Herbert because it wasn't his decision, but it was Brandon Staley's decision to go on 4th and 1 at their own 25 or 30 yard line. It was ridiculous to even think about going for that. And then It's not even like you put the ball in your best player's hands. They like ran a fullback dive or something and got stuffed. And that's why the Vikings had such a good chance to win that game. And look, credit to Kirk Cousins. He gave his team a chance to win. Like, it wasn't like he threw just an awful ball. Maybe it wasn't the best ball, but the ball was placed right in both hands of the receiver, and he just dropped it. And then that's why it was picked. It wasn't like he threw it right to the defender. It was dropped by the receiver that then landed in the defender's hands. So I'm not going to put the blame on Kirk Cousins either. Obviously, this team has been very disappointing, and a lot of it probably is going to go on the defense because Kirk Cousins is on pace for like 60 touchdowns, like 500 yards and stuff like that, and those kind of stats, and yet they're 0-3. It doesn't really make much sense. Like we also mentioned last week in the episode, it's going to be interesting to see what the Vikings, the direction is now. That they are 0-3. They're most likely going to win this week, but I mean, if they don't, then it's just I don't see how they don't try to blow it up at the deadline and get as much as they possibly can. As for Justin Jefferson, him and the Vikings weren't able to come to a contract extension before the season. I don't know why. I mean, it's clear and obvious like how that contract should go. Just the highest paid wide receiver in the league. You just got a top salary kill. I don't know if they would trade him. I don't see how you would trade him. He's like a once in a generational wide receiver. So I don't see them going that direction. But for Justin Jefferson, it has to be frustrating. Like, I don't know how much he likes Kirk Cousins, but I know he'd rather Kirk Cousins than whoever else their other option is. I don't know who it is or who they'd be. I mean, it'd have to be someone worse than Kirk Cousins. There's no way they could bring in someone
Zach Wilson, bro.
Right now. Anyways, so I'm sure he understands it as well. So it's still frustrating. I mean, he's getting his stats, I guess, but he's not winning. He does want to win. He won at LSU. He doesn't want to just be a guy that puts up stats and doesn't win games. So it's definitely frustrating for him. As for Chargers, they sneak out of it again. Barely this time. Again, no credit to Herbert. It's not like he did something to make them win the game. But they did get out of it with a close game. I give that to them. But Brandon Staley did almost blow it. I don't know what to make of this team going forward. They did lose Mike Williams, but they still have Joshua Palmer, and they drafted Quinn Johnson in the first round. I mean,
it should be good.
He looks like a Mike Williams 2.0. I'm sure he won't be that from the get, but eventually, not this year and going into next year, I'm sure he's going to take major strides, especially now because he's going to get more work. He was a beast, obviously, in college. There's a reason he was a first-round pick, but I think they'll be fine based off that part. I think it all just comes down to Herbert and this clutch gene that he just doesn't have.
Dame, Herbert went 40 of 47 for 405 and 3 touchdowns. He completed 85% of his passes. Like, he won them.
Give credit when it's due, scumbag.
It was great. They almost lost the game.
Not because of him. Like, what are we doing?
They're literally in the game because of him. All right, let's move on. Texans, Jaguars. Texans with the upset, 37-17. My God, fellas. I mean, shout out to the Texans. You want to win as many games as possible because they don't own their first round pick in what is still a very questionable trade to me. But this says more about the Jaguars, in my opinion. Fellas, what is going on? What is happening with the Jaguars? I had high expectations for this team, and you're letting me down. What the fuck? What's happening? What is it? Could someone explain to me what is happening with the Jaguars? Like, they seem to not play the Texans well at all. At all. I think they've won, like the last 6 out of 7?
Oh, it's even more. I think the Texans have won 10 of the last 11 against the Jags.
Okay, well, there you go. That's an issue. That's an issue. Dame, what do you make of this game? And what do you make of the Jaguars' little streaky start?
I'm extremely confused at what's going on there because all of us had high expectations for the Jaguars, and a lot of people did. I don't think the division's in question yet because that division is just so bad. I think they'll be fine in that regard. Remember last year, they didn't start off too well either. They kind of had a hot second half of the season. Maybe that's what's going to happen here. But the offense just doesn't look right. Obviously, they added Calvin Ridley. He had a great first game. It's been kind of quiet since. Their running game has been here and there. Again, week 1, Travis Etienne went off, and then the next couple of games, it's been kind of it just, I don't know. I don't know how you lose to the Texans. I get it, you've had trouble with them, but you're just so.
Hey, CJ Stroud looks good, man.
CJ, like, I did say he was going to be the best quarterback in the class, but there's still no reason that this team should be losing to the Houston Texans. Just on every position, up and down, the Jaguars are better. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's like actual players. I don't know what's going on there, but they do need to turn around quick. They have their yearly England game this week against the Falcons. That's a game they should easily win.
I don't know about easily, but I don't know.
They should easily win. Should. I'm not saying they will. They should easily
win. Is kind of nuts.
Well, they're there for
Falcons
2 weeks.
Aren't a good team.
I mean, they're 2-1.
Okay.
Whatever. Go ahead. Finish.
On a talent standpoint, the Falcons don't match up with the Jaguars. Desmond Ridder does not match up with Trevor Lawrence. Their running game doesn't match up. The receivers, the defense, all that. None of that matches up with the Falcons. They should be able to win this game. Maybe that'll get them going, but as of right now, it's very concerning. Obviously, against the Chiefs, the best team in the AFC, they didn't look good either. They lost that game. Their offense was non-existent. And credit to the Chiefs' defense, but regardless, when you have the firepower that you have with the Jaguars with Ridley, Kirk, Lawrence, ETN, you should score more than 9 points, especially against a team that you know you're going to be battling at the top of the AFC. And then just to have a stinker against the Texans is just embarrassing and definitely concerning.
To echo those points, ever since week 1 where they were actually able to put up 30 against the Colts, which not really an accomplishment to put up 30, I guess, in teams in your own division, as the Texans then did to the Jags. It's looked rough. They really struggled in the Kansas City game, and now they really struggled in this Texans game. And maybe the Houston Texans got to give credit where credit is due. This team is like trying to play at their best every single week. You got a new head coach. It's a new head coach. It's completely different power structure there. It's a new mindset for Houston. You got to give them credit. CJ Stroud playing great. Maybe he should have been the first overall pick like our mock draft had after all. But ultimately, the Texans are one of those teams where it's like they're going to come out, they're going to punch you in the mouth, and because they're here, like they're going to surprise you. I think they're going to play surprise this season. It would not surprise me if this is the last AFC South game they win this season because, well, I picked the Texans to beat the Titans at least once? Absolutely. But I think that's just the kind of team Houston is. Scrappy, talented, hungry pieces on both sides of the ball. And it's not even that they played necessarily spectacular. They just got the big plays to happen when they needed it, which included a fullback returning a kick return for a touchdown, which what a play that was, to say the very least. But no, in terms of the Jaguars, yeah, they're struggling. I think offensively, there's just something out of sync. Travis Etienne, like they mentioned, honestly, the game he had against the Texans was his most rushing yards and most yards per carry, even against the Colts game to start the season. So just Etienne hasn't necessarily been the same to start the season that most would have expected. Trevor Lawrence has looked fine, but it's almost like there's something missing in terms of him clicking with his guys. Like numbers wise, offensively, it seems okay, but there's something missing there. And like Dame said, maybe at the end of the day, these just, cat name teams, these Bengals and these Jaguars just love starting slow because the Bengals always start slow with Joe Burrow and the Jaguars started slow last season before they won the division. So who the heck knows? But they definitely need to clean it up really quick because yes, it is the AFC South and yes, it is a bad division overall, but you don't want to lose ground in any way, shape, or form. It is the worst possible thing to allow to give your opponents even a speck of confidence that they could do something. So if you're Jacksonville, you got to round into form here really good because this is they lost this Texans game. They lost the Chiefs game last week. They're still going to have another tough game or two. They won their division last year. There's still another division winner or two left on this schedule. This is not a cakewalk for Jacksonville by any stretch of the imagination. So they need to pull it together. And I think it has to start with the offense. The defense has played good 2 out of 3 weeks. This was the worst game possible, and I just think they were put in a terrible position by their offense and special teams. Freaking kickoff touchdown to a fullback, unbelievable.
All right, 2 more games, and we could wrap up the NFL segment of the week. Chiefs Bears, fellas. Chiefs 41, Bears 10. Chiefs handle business. Obviously, this game was bigger for different reasons. I mean, business is business, fellas. I guess no one notable is at the game that we wouldn't know about, obviously. That has no impact on the cultural zeitgeist, of course. Anyway, let's not talk about that. Bears fall to 0-3. My God. This came right after the whole Justin Fields press conference, for lack of a better term, controversy, because he was just kind of blaming it on coaches, throwing subs or something like that, and then he came out saying that he wasn't really blaming it on coaches. So everyone was kind of like, you know what? Maybe this is the week Justin Fields goes off. He plays loose. He plays free. and then they drop 10 points only, and then they get blown out. Fellas.
A pity, 10 points.
Yeah. I think it was they didn't play like their starters. The Chiefs didn't play their starters in like the fourth quarter. It is looking bleak outside. It's looking dark. It's getting gray outside, fellas, and I don't know the direction of this team. They have they have the they have the Panthers pick.
Yep.
But Lord Jesus, I don't know if I could ever feel hyped for a team. I don't think I've ever felt less hyped for a team that will have 2 top 10 picks. Like, it's nuts to me how bad this team is. What a letdown. Bears fans, I feel bad for you. I sympathize with you as a Jets fan. What is happening, man? DJ Moore, I think, doesn't want to be there anymore. I think DJ Moore gets traded. I really do. I don't know what's gonna happen with Fields. Like, I think like this season's done. This season is done. Morale wise, it's as cooked as ever. I mean, Fields isn't like he's to blame for some of this, but like it's just like it's looking bleak, and they have to make a decision soon because if they lose to the Broncos, the Bears versus the Broncos might be the most interesting game this week.
Tank Bowl, baby.
It's just what? One of these teams is gonna lose, bro. One of these teams is gonna be 0-4, and I think
Chris, we might get a tie. We might.
I don't know if I want that. I need a clear-cut loser in this game, and I don't know, man. Spoiler alert. I think the Bears might lose this. I don't know. I just think after the Broncos, lost in historic fashion, they're gonna come out like just swinging. But I don't know. They don't know how to maintain leads. Guys, this is the theme of this episode is it's looking bleak outside. And for the Bears, it's really bad. It's really bad. I don't know what happens because if they lose like in week 4, I think just there's going to be some significant changes. There really is. Like this, it's a ticking time bomb at this point. It's a ticking time bomb. I think they're going to clean house earlier than what we expected to. Like I think Moore gets traded. I don't know if Fields gets traded. I think Fields might be his last year in Chicago, in my opinion. There's going to be a head coaching change, all of that. I mean, you guys could speculate on if you think it will happen early in the season or if it's going to happen after the season. But I think they're going to clean house. This is a lost season. If they lose to Denver, it'll just accelerate the process. But yeah, Jurg, what did you make of this this whole situation and just them getting cream pied by the Chiefs? For the Chiefs, business as usual. Obviously, we don't need to talk about them. Obviously, the more notable thing was who was in attendance, but let's not talk about that.
Yeah, when a human being that has basically their own GDP and saved a country from a significant recession, as we are to be believed apparently by news reports, is more news than the actual game.
That's crazy. That fact alone.
It's wild, but it's true. Which really maybe should be a topic of discussion to have, but not on the show. Not on the show. We might have somewhat in the name, but it's all sports here, baby. Somewhat sports on IG. But Justin Fields' time in Chicago is over. That being said, it's not a matter of if it's over. It's just when will it be over? When will they trade him? You have to trade him at this point. It's very clear he's not the future of the organization. But that doesn't mean you necessarily trade DJ Moore, because there's 2 quarterbacks coming out this year. One of them is going to be there at the 1st or 2nd overall pick. And if you are DJ, I know it'll be tough, but because it's Ryan Poles, this is not the quarterback he brought in. If you're Ryan Poles, you immediately need to sit down with DJ Moore. You need to have a conversation with him, and you need to just sell him on the fact that there will be a quarterback that can actually throw the ball 20-plus yards down the field after the season coming in, which I'm very confident that either Caleb Williams or Drake May can both do. Heck, even Deion's son at this point. Something needs to happen. But irregardless, Matt Eberflus is fired after the next game if they start 0-4, and if they lose to the Broncos in embarrassing fashion, which God knows, considering what happened in Denver. But it's just not pretty. I will say this about the whole Justin Fields saga, which is really stupid that we need to call it a saga, but here's the thing. At the end of the day, we have seen a lot to believe that Justin Fields right now can be conceived as a not good quarterback in the NFL. But I think so much has worked against him that I want to see him be put on a better team at the end of the day. I dare you to give me a rookie quarterback in this league that would have been okay with Matt Nagy and Matt Eberflus as the head guys, as his 2 head coaches in his career. Matt Nagy and Matt Eberflus. Can you condemn anybody to more subpar head coaching in this league than that? The only duo in the last 5 years that could top that in terms of pure hell on earth would be Adam Gase into Urban Meyer. And those guys were separate, thankfully. God bless if Trevor Lawrence had to go through that. But ultimately, he has not had good coaching. He has not had good offensive play calling. He has not had good offensive coordinators. He just hasn't. Like, it is not a stretch to say that, yes, Justin Fields has looked bad in his NFL career so far. That is a perfectly legitimate thing to say, and I would agree with it. But at the same time, he hasn't had, tell me, aside from DJ Moore, what has he had to work with in Chicago? And this has been 3 games of DJ Moore. He's had 2 terrible head coaches, terrible offensive coordinators, an offensive line that, even to start this season, they weren't 100% because the guy who's playing at center, Cody Whitehair, who's supposed to be a guard, they lost the guy who he was either this season or last season. He was a free agent signing, and Nate Davis. He had to miss the last game. Their left tackle hasn't been playing to start the season properly. Actually, no, excuse me. He was playing, but now he just got hurt. Overall, Justin Fields has had nothing to work with in Chicago. So it is more than fair to say, yes, Justin Fields has not been a good quarterback so far. I want to see him on a different team. I want to see him get a at least stable thing. Like, it's funny, actually, we were just talking about the dang Texans. CJ Stroud, if there's one thing we could say about him and his situation, there's a head coach there with a vision. There's an offensive line there. Laramie Tunsil is one of the best left tackles in the game, and the Texans actually, spend more time than even I gave them credit for to fix the offensive line over the last season and a half. And the skill position is what's lacking there in Houston, but they're making it work because they are doing the best they can with play calling. Fields hasn't had any of that in his now going on 3rd season. And I just think it needs to end up with him being traded. I don't know what you get back. I don't know where you trade him to. I'm sure someone is going to be more than willing. What is he, 23 years old? How many teams would take a flyer on a 23-year-old? Like, I'm more than willing to bet someone will be willing to trade for Justin Fields, and it needs to happen. This Chicago Bears season is done. This regime, like I said, Eberflus is gone, but Ryan Poles, this is his first head coach hire, and this wasn't even his quarterback. He's going to have the time to fix this. He has 2 first-round picks to play with and a little bit more draft capital depending on who they start trading off this season. Mainly Fields, but maybe somebody else. I don't know who else will be on the block per se, but it's safe to say I'm not going to say this is his last game, the one coming up against Denver, but I think we have definitively seen the end of the Justin Fields experiment in Chicago. And I don't think a mad scientist could screw up an experiment more than this one got screwed up by the Bears.
Well, I think Justin Fields is garbage, and I get it. He hasn't had much help, but I personally don't see him doing anything to put himself in a position to be better. I don't think he can throw the ball well. I think he makes a lot of dumb decisions. I don't think he targets DJ Moore enough. He finally got the number 1 receiver, and he just isn't able to get him the ball enough. He doesn't run the ball. His main thing is running the ball. Last year he rushed for 1,000 yards, I'm pretty sure. And this year it just seems like he's completely abandoned that aspect of his game, which is obviously his strength. And I mean, if that's your strength, that's your strength. You should play to your strengths. So that's actually kind of confusing to me. I don't understand why he's doing that. I think if this continues for the Bears, there's no way they don't draft a quarterback. I mean, this is supposed to be one of the best quarterback classes in a while. There's multiple QBs here. And if they are at the top of the draft, it's for a reason. It means that Justin Fields hasn't been able to do his job well enough for them to be confident in him moving forward. And I think they'll be able to draft a quarterback, and then whether they keep Fields on and they make it a competition, or they trade Fields for even more draft compensation to help their new QB that they're going to draft be better, because they're probably going to have 2 top 10 picks, and you either use one on a QB, you use one on either an offensive lineman or another weapon, and you go with that. Because when's the next time they're going to have 2 top 10 picks again? It might be a while. So to me, they might as well use it on a quarterback. If they are that high in the draft and Justin Fields isn't looking like it, you might as well reset your quarterback contract, your rookie deal, and go with a new one. Fire the head coach. Just go all brand new. Fire the GM. Just go new GM, new coach, new QB. Start from scratch with all the assets you have and all the cap space you have. Start from new and go from there. But it's definitely not encouraging. I didn't even think they were going to be this bad. Obviously, I wasn't high on Fields like most were, but I didn't think they were going to be this bad, and I didn't think he was going to look this bad either. So it is kind of surprising. I mean, they have the Broncos this week, two awful teams, and they play on Thursday, which is possibly the worst Thursday night game they could possibly think of. Next Thursday is the Bears versus Commanders. I'll be asleep by 7 p.m. I'll tell you that much. But those two games, I feel like Justin Fields specifically needs to show something. The Denver defense isn't anything crazy. Neither is the Commanders defense. He needs to be better those two games specifically because obviously the competition isn't that high, and the team just needs to be better if people want to keep their jobs.
I can't wait. I can't wait for the Bears Broncos, man. I'm not going to be watching it in full because I'm a sane human being, but man, I cannot wait for the result. All right, last game we'll talk about Broncos and Dolphins. Dolphins win 70-20. So they put up, an NBA team's first half score on the Broncos.
I see why murder podcasts are popular because watching murder on the field was pretty cathartic, actually.
I will say though, before the game happened, I was like, this might be a trap game. You know what? Patrick Surtain on Tyreek Hill. I'm like, it might look slow for them, Who knows? Maybe the Broncos can make it interesting. I didn't think they would win, but I was like, maybe they can make it interesting. And God, was I wrong. Oh man. How do we even talk about this? I mean,
the Dolphins should have set the record.
Yeah, I mean, like, props to them for being the humble team and just, like, not, just, like, kind of, like, not thrashing them to, like, do the record. And they're just, like, screw it. We'll just, like, kind of mail it in at this point. Guys, well, I mean, I guess you could talk about the Broncos because their season's done. We don't have to. Let's keep this brief. Because, like, what did we find out about the Broncos that we didn't already know? For me, the Dolphins... And obviously, you play against the Broncos, who's like not a great opponent, but this team, again, no Jalen Ramsey either. This team is going to be a force to reckon with right now. I think they're the scariest team in the AFC right now. Right now, I think it's the Dolphins. And man, if they are fully healthy, this team, in my opinion, if fully healthy, war of attrition, Jurg, you talked about, earlier in the show. They're the team to beat. I think they can make the Super Bowl right now with the way they're playing. Now, again, next week's game, week 4, they play the Bills. That's going to be a very interesting game. That is going to be a very interesting game. I never understood why, like, these type of games aren't, the primetime games. Like, why is the Bills-Dolphins happening at, like, 1 p.m.? Well, I mean, the Chiefs versus the Jets. I get it. They thought Rodgers, but still. I just, like... games like that really need to get shown more love on like the the more national scale, but I don't know. That's going to be an interesting game. I think it's going to tell a lot about both teams. Dolphins look so good. Mike McDaniel, man, what a stud of a coach. Fellas, I mean, I guess what do we make of the ceiling of the Dolphins, Dame?
The Dolphins, I think, with the way they're playing now, all right, first of all, they started season 3-0 last year, and so let's not get too ahead of ourselves, but it does look like a different team than it was last year for sure. Obviously, it all comes down to Tua's health. But this team, if they play like this, the creativity this offense has and how explosive they are, I mean, how can you not say they're a Super Bowl contender? Like, you just can't say they aren't. They're putting up 70 points. Obviously, that's not a weekly thing. But on other games in the season, their offense just looks unstoppable. They put up 70 points without Jalen Waddle. I mean, that's super impressive. It seems like any running back they put in that system is going to go off for like 150 yards and score multiple touchdowns. Tua looks to be slinging the ball up and down the field to everybody. I know Tyreek Hill, I think he leads the league in receiving yards. I'm not sure. If not, he's second. But he's spreading the ball as well to his tight ends, to all these other receivers. The defense is playing really good as well. So from top to bottom, this team is absolutely loaded. And coaching Mike McDaniel, he looks like he's en route to Coach of the Year candidate there for sure. But at the end of the day, all comes down to his health. And I think if he's 100% healthy, we'll be most likely be seeing them in the AFC Championship. And probably the road to the AFC Championship will have to go through Miami because I don't see how this team loses many games this season. And I think the number 1 seed is going to come down to that week 8 or 9 game in Germany where they play the Chiefs. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that they're putting that game at 9:30 in Germany.
I will be up for it.
I mean, yeah, I have to be up for it. I mean, how can I miss that game? But it's just so stupid how they schedule that. But I think that game might be the most important game of the season.
I mean, to be fair, a battle of that caliber hasn't happened in Germany since the 1940s, and this time the Germans can actually cheer. But to the Dolphins itself, Chris, as you're talking about, what is the ceiling for this team? This could be the best team in all of football.
I think so.
Like, fully healthy right now, the Dolphins, I think, are the only team that deserve to be in the conversation of beating the Chiefs in the AFC. I really think, they have the offense to go tit for tat against Kansas City. And it's not just because of the skill position. Granted, the skill position is really good on that team. It's the quarterback. I remember years ago, Tua coming out of college, and everything that was happening to him was all because of injury. But the talent and skill was always there. And they mentioned that they started out 3-0 last season too. I think it was the fourth game when Tua got hurt against the Bengals. And the confirmed concussion, because he had two other ones last season. Let's not forget that. Ultimately, the Dolphins, you said it earlier, Chris, with my comment about attrition, then Dame just said it itself. It's all about health with this team. It's in this sport. It's all about who can stay the healthiest for the most important period of time. And if you're Miami, if you can somehow, some way get to the playoffs, rest them a game at the end of the season for all I care. Rest them a game or two at the end of the season if you got the top seed clinched, basically. But the Miami Dolphins, the ceiling is, like Dame said, the AFC Championship game maybe being in Miami, which who would have thought? Now,
huge.
Yeah. Now, granted, have the Chiefs had to deal with road AFC Championship games in their little run so far the last 5 years or so? Yes, but Miami,
weather advantage, man.
This is the question mark. And like you said, the weather advantage, we already know how the sideline is going to be set up. The Chiefs are going to get dick all in terms of, shading on their side of the field. And the Dolphins are going to get all of it because the Dolphins are not going to care about, helping the Chiefs players out. I think this is a chance for Miami to revitalize a football team that has needed it for so long. I forget what exactly was the cutoff year, but at some point, the Miami Dolphins were maybe not number one, but they were the winningest team in NFL history, I think, based in win percentage. Dan Marino made this team respectable for, a decade and a half, maybe close to 2 decades, and they lost that all for a very long time. This is a team, this is a market, if for football, that needed a revitalization, and it's taken a couple of years. You had to fire a head coach to get to this because Lord knows this wasn't going to happen under the previous guy for Tua. And it just goes to show at the end of the day, when you instill in your players the belief in them, the confidence, and you give them the structure, they can succeed. Negatives be damned. Tua is in an amazing spot. This is his team. Like, he is the definitive quarterback. He is lacing it every single freaking week to Hill and, I would say Waddle, but he missed last game. But, have you guys seen the stat-by-stat comparison? Tua has the exact same amount of completions and attempts this season like he does last season. It is absurd the high level of accuracy we have seen from him. In a league that is already meant to where, we have quarterbacks going 40 of 47 in some games at 85% freaking completion percentages, that this dude is at that level is utterly insane. The Dolphins are such a talented team. And like you said, Chris, they're going to get Jalen Ramsey back. I think the interesting thing will be, what is he going to look like post-injury? And how are you going to play him? I don't know it. This is the complicated thing for Miami. Is do you look to improve this roster? Because it's a good team, but it's still not perfect, I would say. The defense.
Yeah, the defense is a little suspect.
The defense is slightly suspect. Now, they've had a couple weak opponents here the last couple of weeks, to help that out. It's the Broncos and the Patriots. But, when it comes to the Chiefs, when it comes to, we saw, for all our critiques to the Chargers still dropped over 30 on them, right? It was just the Chargers defense that somehow beat Miami at being the worst one that day. This Dolphins team still needs to look at marginal improvements where it's necessary. But if you're talking about them at their apex, oh man, I think there's only 1 or 2 teams in the league at most that could stop them. Maybe 3. We're talking about being in the top 1% in this league. Yeah. That's where the Dolphins are at, and much deserved. Like Dame said, if we had to give early awards right now, Mike McDaniel's the coach of the year, and it's not even close. It's just not.
He's awesome to root for, man. He's so funny. But I can't believe from where they were at a few years ago to where they are now. That's nuts. That is nuts, bro. I mean, just wow. So the Dolphins' upcoming schedule, because I decided to pull this up while you guys were talking. So they have the Bills week 4, which I think is a huge game. Huge game because that's a statement win. That is a 100% a statement win if they beat the Bills.
That might decide the AFC East early because
Possibly.
Because think about it, then the Bills will be 0-2 in the division and the Dolphins will be 2-0.
Yeah. I hear you. Because the Bills look like they've, picked it up a little bit the last 2 weeks, so they're 2-1. Then they have the Giants, W. Panthers, W. Eagles, that's up in the air. I want to that's gonna be a good one.
Oh, finally a good primetime football game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. That's at 8. Patriots, I think they're better than the Patriots, but Patriots play them well, I think.
But it's in Miami. Belichick struggles in Miami.
Okay, so he's 0-6 against Tua.
Yeah.
Then the Chiefs, which I think that'll be the season-defining game. Then they have the Raiders, then the Jets, then the Commanders, then the Titans, then the Jets again. And then their last 3 games I think are pretty tricky for them.
Mm-hmm.
They could still win like any of these games, but they have the Cowboys, the Ravens, and the Bills as their last 3 games. So in conclusion, that's 3. Hold on. The Chiefs, 4, 5. So for the rest of their season, they're looking at 5 potential losses. And by potential, they could also potentially win as well. But I'd say those are the only 5 tricky games for them.
If Tua stays healthy, Chris, because you're mentioning the last 3 games, so let's just skip to the Dallas Cowboys game on Christmas Eve. If this team is able to stay healthy, which is a big if just in the NFL as a whole, because good Lord, people are going down with injuries. At worst, if they're all 100% healthy, this team could be 12-2 going into the Dallas game. I think on paper, the Chiefs and the Eagles are the only teams that are beating Miami right now, just before them.
Could beat Miami.
That could beat them.
Yeah. So at worst,
and Dallas lost Trevon Diggs.
Yeah, that's gonna be. I think they could beat I don't think the Cowboys are a threat to them. But and speaking of, just got the alert. Jalen Waddle's out of concussion protocol. So there you go. At worst, I think. One of these games could be trap games. Who knows? But at worst, in my opinion, right now, the Dolphins finish the season 12-5. At worst, 12-5. And I don't think they're gonna drop every game to the Bills. I think they'll split the Bills. I think they could beat the Cowboys. They could beat the Ravens. This team just might lose 3 games, bro. It's crazy. I don't know. They're exciting to watch. But again, they have a target on their back now. They are the team to beat in the NFL. So shout out to them. I don't want to talk about the Broncos anymore. All right. That'll do it for the NFL segment. Let's transition to the NBA, where a blockbuster trade occurred. Fellas, man, oh man. The guy who got traded, I'm sorry, I just saw a group chat message. The guy who got traded was expected to be traded, I think, but he went to a team that none of us expected. Jurg, obviously you have a lot to say about this, but let me just get the details out of the way. Full trade, a 3-team trade happened. Damian Lillard traded to the Milwaukee BUCKS. The Blazers received Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Toumani Camara, I don't know what that is, a 2029 first-round BUCKS pick, and a BUCKS pick swap. And the Suns get Nurkic, Nazir Little, Keon Johnson, Grayson Allen. All right, let's talk about this. I guess for the Blazers, the main piece they get here is DeAndre Ayton. We'll talk, obviously we'll go in level of importance order. The Blazers get DeAndre Ayton as their main young piece. I guess the 2029 first round pick from the Bucks at 6 years away. I can't comment on that. I guess they're just hoping that the Bucks are ass by the time we're in our 30s. But yeah, and then they get Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday, I believe, will get rerouted possibly within the next week. I think before training camp or before media day. That he has a lot of suitors, so Drew Holiday will probably get traded, but they end up with DeAndre Ayton and I guess some picks here and there. For the Suns, I think for them, you get a little depth in Nazir Little, Keon Johnson, and Grayson Allen, which I think is huge because they're so top heavy. And I think the biggest flaw with them was that they were thin in terms of depth and bench. They get some depth here, so they get some, some shooting here. I like Nazir Little. Man, they moved on from Ayton. I've seen a lot Ayton, I think, just didn't fit in with them. I don't think he wanted to be there anymore. I think he had no place in the, and just with Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant. He looks checked out mentally. And I don't know how he would have fared with Frank Vogel at that point. So I don't think he wanted to be there. I don't necessarily. It's crazy because like you go to Nurkic. I mean, do you trust Nurkic to hold it down? I mean, Nurkic is past his prime. He's like injury riddled. I guess they were just like, fuck it. If we get some depth here, it's it's a positive for us. Obviously, they think they can make it work because of like their top stars. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how it's gonna look at the center position for them. I don't think they'll care. I think they're gonna go the Golden State route from like a few years ago, where they're just like, I guess, little makeshift center rotation, which could work. But I think for the Suns, I think they got better slightly just because you have some bench pieces there. Again, Nazir Little, I'm a fan of. Keon Johnson, don't know if he'll reach his potential on this team because it's so stacked. And of course, Ted Cruz Jr., Grayson Allen. So yeah. And for the Bucks, you get Damian Lillard. Fellas, oof. I'm gonna let Jurg do most of the talking. It's championship or bust now for the Milwaukee Bucks. You basically traded Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard. It's Damian Lillard and Giannis now. This is, I think, arguably the best duo in the NBA, in my opinion. Man, oh man, this is going to be nuts. I think they're easily the favorites to win the Eastern Conference now. Middleton is still there. I know he's kind of on the decline because his knee's kind of fucked, but he's still there. Brook Lopez is still there. You have some, decent, bench pieces, but you have Damian Lillard. It's championship or bust now. Simple as. I don't know a team that's going to stop them. I think they leapfrog the Celtics. To Philly, I don't even take seriously anymore. They're not going to do shit regardless, even if this trade didn't happen. But yeah, Lillard doesn't go to Miami, the team he wanted to, but he's going to compete for a championship now, so you can't be too angry at this point. Bucks, shout out to them. Giannis was like, you know what, guys? I'm flirting with the idea of possibly leaving if we don't make moves here. And they went in and got Damian Lillard, so shout out to them. They are not playing games. W for the Bucks here. Blazers didn't get as much as I thought. And Jurg, you're gonna talk about this. You'll be the main event for this segment, but they did not get as much as I thought they would. And maybe it's like out of spite that they didn't trade with the Miami Heat, but I don't know. I don't know what the end goal was for the Blazers here. I mean, I guess you kind of satisfied Damian Lillard, but I feel like there was some petty involved. Like, you guys, you're in the similar position as the Knicks were when they traded for Donovan Mitchell, and there was so much honey dicking going around, and then they end up trading him to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, yep. Dame, I guess thoughts. Well, let's also talk about the Miami Heat because I mean they're not in a good position right now because they lost some key pieces in free agency, and I guess they were banking off Dame. I'm pretty sure that Riley did. I mean, there's some conflicting reports on how hard Riley went for Damian Lillard. I'm pretty sure like he, did all he could, Tyler Hero and a bunch of picks and swaps, but it didn't get the job done ultimately. The Heat are not in a good position, and I don't know what that means. Because it's the Miami Heat, so not in a good position probably means that like they'll be like what? I mean, not in the top 3 seed. I mean, like their ceiling is always going to be high, Ren. Like it's not in a good position means like they'll still have a higher floor than most NBA teams. So wow. But I don't know. I'm concerned about the Miami Heat because the roster is kind of thin now, and Jimmy Butler's a year older, and you keep Tyler Hero, who I don't know how he's going to be feeling. Dame, what'd you make of this trade and for all teams involved, including the Miami Heat?
I think for the Bucks, I think it was an incredible move for them. Obviously they hear the rumblings of Giannis like talking about how he may not want to stay here. So I'm sure they felt pressure to make a move happen, and they were kind of limited. Like they couldn't keep Drew Holiday, Middleton, and Giannis and still really improve the roster. They were going to have to move one of them, and to get themselves into these Damian Lillard trade talks when everyone basically thought that he was just going to go to the Heat and they shouldn't waste their time. To get Damian Lillard, who's, I mean, what would you say? He's the second best point guard behind Steph Curry in the entire league. To put him next to Giannis, who's arguably the best player in the league, to have that duo, that pick and roll, that pick and pop, I mean, it's going to be really hard to stop. And Damian Lillard, even if he went to Miami, he still would have had like that pressure on his shoulders of being the guy and carrying the team on the offensive side of the ball. And now he goes to Milwaukee. He doesn't have to be that number one guy. He has Giannis next to him. They could share the load. Neither one of them has to be the true number one. They could both go half-half. I think it's good. And they obviously still have Middleton. They still have Pat Connaughton. Brook Lopez, I think, is just an incredible player to have. This team is absolutely ready to make another run at the NBA Finals, and they just needed something different. This team was kind of getting stale, and I understand that Jrue Holiday brings so much to this team defensively. Probably the best defending guard in the entire NBA. But like I said, this team is getting stale. They just needed to change things up. And I see people arguing like, "Oh, this made them worse." Jrue Holiday brought so much to the team. There's no way you can tell me that a team that swapped out Damian Lillard for Jrue Holiday got worse. There's just absolutely no argument for it. If you want to argue that it didn't make them that much better, that's fine. I get it. But there's no possible way they got worse by adding a top 12 player in the NBA for Jrue Holiday. Like, it's just not possible. Personally, I'm super excited to watch. I'm a big Damian Lillard fan, and I want Giannis to keep rising up the legacy rankings. So I'm hoping that they make it far and they win chips together, multiple. It's going to be interesting to see if Giannis signs that extension. I saw that they reached out to him about a 3-year max extension. Who knows if he's going to sign that? Maybe he wants to see how this works, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
But for the Trailblazers, I mean, you get Jrue Holiday, you get DeAndre Ayton. It looks like they're going to try to move Jrue Holiday for assets. I think that would be smart, especially because you already have Scoot and Simons in the backcourt. There's no reason to have Holiday there. I think Ayton is a good piece to add to swap out for Nurkic. Obviously, younger. I think he's better as well. Probably switch out Holiday for some assets. I think it's going to be a good move. As for the Suns, I really like what they ended up with this deal. Obviously, Grayson Allen isn't the greatest, but that team could take anything to add to their depth. So adding Grayson Allen there, Nurkic swapping out for Ian. Maybe Ian is a better player, but Ian clearly just wasn't happy there. He was never going to reach his full potential there. I think Nurkic is a big body, tough guy that you can put in the middle who doesn't need the ball. You don't have to throw it down to him on the blocker. You needed to with Ian. He's not going to be a guy that brings drama to the team because he's not getting the ball. He's just going to get rebounds. He's going to play defense. He's going to bump and bruise Jokic. He's going to try to at least better than Ian did. Because you can't have another center who needs the ball down low when you have Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker. You just need a guy who's going to do the dirty work, and I think that's what Nurkic will do. And then for the Miami Heat, I think it's a big L for them because it seemed like they were kind of prepping their offseason that they were just going to land Damian Lillard some way, somehow. Obviously, they didn't get Gabe Vincent back. They didn't really add anybody. They kind of just stood how they were, and I get it. They made the NBA Finals, but it wasn't good enough. They didn't win. They look completely outmatched compared to Denver Nuggets. So I do think they needed to do something, and obviously they were just banking on Damian Lillard. And now you have Tyler Hero back. Now I'm sure he'll be fine because he didn't want to leave. I mean, why a guy like him who's so into fashion, obviously into all this media stuff, would not want to move from Miami to Portland. I promise you that. So I'm sure he's going to be fine mentally and stuff. He's going to play just as well as he always does. But I just think this team has a ceiling. I think they reached it last year. I don't think they could get much better than that. Obviously, a lot of these guys are getting old. Their best players getting older. Jim Miller is not going to get that much better. So I think it's a big L for the Heat, especially because one of their top contenders in the East did get better. But I absolutely love this move for all teams involved in the actual trade.
Oh, and Jurg, if you want, because Dame, I'm sorry, I forgot to bring this up. If you want to bring up like possible destinations for Jrue Holiday, you could too. Because I know he'll have a lot of suitors. I mean, which team you could ultimately see him going to? Because it's inevitable that he gets traded, you know. So, but yeah, you go ahead, Jurg. Sorry.
Well, I think a quick list just on Holiday because you were mentioning him. Like,
I think Shams brought up a few teams, right?
Yeah, I think it was the Lakers,
Celtics,
Heat.
Funny enough,
yeah, Clippers.
Yeah,
I think the Bulls were on that list.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying, like,
no, I know. I laugh when it comes to the Bulls.
I'll just answer that part real quick. I think Clippers should be pushing for this right now because they need a playmaker next to PG and Kawhi. And if the 76ers thing was, if they didn't want James Harden, go for another guy who can, help at least with playmaking. And also, you don't lose any defense with Jrue Holiday. I'll say that much.
I think him and Philly is a perfect fit, in my opinion. Maybe I think Philly could definitely use him.
I mean, if you want more mid on mid, send him to the Bulls, but we'll see on that.
Go ahead, pal.
All right. I will start this off by giving you a podium of winners from this transaction, right? First place, of course, the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm with Dame. I don't understand why anyone is trying to argue anything against the Bucks here. You get the best player in the trade. There's a pretty good chance you won the trade. And that is the case here. You get Damian Lillard, who, like you actually mentioned, Chris, which I don't think is actually being mentioned enough when people are breaking down this trade. Chris Middleton is coming off a injury-riddled season for himself. The worst season of his career health-wise, I think, in terms of, like, since he's become established in what we know him to be. I think Dame takes a lot of pressure offensively off of Giannis in the half court, which I think is ultimately what this trade is for. I don't think, as much as I like Jrue Holiday personally, you got to face the facts here. And a 33-year-old point guard like Jrue Holiday, that he himself wasn't able to help get the half-court offense invigorated for them in the postseason, it was a telltale sign that something big needed to happen. They fired Mike Budenholzer for a reason. Giannis finally did what we've been asking him to do and put pressure on someone in that organization. They're like, hey, man, I love Milwaukee, but things can change. And because there's only 2 years left on his current deal, like 2 full years. There's a player option at the end, so it's a 2+1 situation. They put the pressure and they reached out, and eventually they were able to get it. But this wasn't months of work. I will get to that in a moment here. So that's my gold medal winner of this, of course. Obviously, the Bucks are the gold medal winner. Silver medal, Phoenix Suns. Phenomenal deal for the Phoenix Suns. Our number one critique of the Suns after the Bradley Beal trade was the fact that, man, there was no depth on that team. Like, it was Booker, Beal, KD, and Darius Bazley. It was basically the bench, and that's it. They got rid of a couple pieces. They added a couple pieces throughout the summer who I think are going to be able to help this team. Once we get in a couple weeks here, ladies and gentlemen, when we go through our standings, as we normally do, our 1 through 10 in both the East and the West, we'll get into it in more detail. But you mentioned it, Chris. I think with Jusuf Nurkic, I'm actually in disagreement with your take on it. I think this was a great pickup because I think they get the kind of center who can play with Book, Kyrie, and KD in terms of not needing the ball, in terms of not demanding the ball, and he's not going to throw a pout fest about it, and he's not going to get upset at his coach for being a little bit too mean to him. Jusuf Nurkic is like Dame said, is a strong man. he could deal with a little bit of criticism, unlike a certain soft center that's no longer on the team couldn't deal with. The head coach that was quote unquote too mean to him ain't even there anymore. And yet DeAndre Ayton was still unhappy there. So that just lets you everything you need to know about that organizational headache, to say the very least. So the Suns bolstered their depth in this trade, got rid of an anchor of a contract. I think the Jusuf Nurkic deal too, I think only has 1 or 2 years left, which is kind of on the timeline when you really think about it, with KD and with Beal and Booker. So really, actually, this is more of a benefit for Phoenix, I think. And again, this year, little athletic wing could maybe do with being the third guy in terms of the forwards, because I think Darius Bazley is much more established compared to him. We've seen him play a little bit more, but obviously, it's TBD when it comes to Frank Vogel's lineups. But I just think the depth, the wing depth that they added more of, and Grayson Allen, like Dame said, is he special? No. But he's 10 to 15 points per game consistently, maybe more 10 to 12, but every once in a while he'll give you a 15 to 20 point game. Like, Grayson Allen is a solid role player. And when you're the Suns, who were so thin at the role player spot going into this, or like as the offseason went on, you needed guys like this. Matt Ishbia, I got to give props to him. He is willing to spend. He is willing to go in the luxury tax on a big basis here early on in his ownership tenure. Robert Sarver was never willing to do this. Robert Sarver would let cores go to not pay a couple extra dollars here. We know how cheap that man was. Like, at the end of the day, this is a massive thing for the Suns that, at least I think for the first 2 to 4 years of his tenure, he's willing to spend right now with this core that they have. I think he understands that it's a 2 to 4 year experiment that they have here with these guys. Like, I think he deserves a lot of props for it. My third place winner. Do you guys want to guess who my third place winner on this podium is?
I don't know. Go ahead, talk to me.
Apparently, I didn't expect this. It's NBA Twitter. Because, Oh, how many of you sycophants and you vagabonds come out of the woodworks to celebrate the fact that a team that was more accomplished than 28 other teams in the NBA last season, mind you, how quickly you all were to celebrate the fact that one team didn't get a superstar. And oh boy, what a reaction it was on Twitter, NBA Twitter, my old friend, as I've made apparent on this podcast in the past. Because good Lord above, you people just absolutely sicken me at this point when it comes to everything. Yeah, there's a reason why there's those are the three winners, because I'm just about sick and tired of this. You guys, aside from the podcast, we communicate on a relatively consistent basis, I think. Like the people know this if they've listened to the episode in the past. And if this is the first one, what an episode. I'm a Heat fan. I'll say that straight up. But these two have to deal with me on a little bit more of a regular basis than one time per week. I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse in their case. Have I ever texted in the chat, guys, with gusto, with ego of the whole Damian Lillard situation? Have I done that even once?
No.
At the end of the season, Pat Riley said that the team was going to be willing, or not willing, but if they had to run it back, they would run it back with changes to the organization. So you see as it goes on, like you mentioned, Chris, and Dame kind of said it too. Caleb Martin, not Caleb Martin, excuse me. Gabe Vincent, gone. I think he went to the Lakers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Max Strus, gone. He went to, I think it was the Cleveland Cavaliers. There's probably one or two other role players that are just escaping my brain at the moment, but gone. A couple role players went. They added a handful of guys. Thomas Bryant, a better backup center than Plumlee. Good Lord above. The Plumlee minutes took years off my life in the NBA Finals. Josh Richardson basically kind of replaces Max Strus to an extent. Not as good of a shooter, but he basically replaces Max Strus. Although maybe Duncan Robinson is really going to be the Max Strus replacement at this point. And then Gabe Vincent is gone. Miami needs to figure out who's going to be the actual proper backup point guard, even though that's going to be Kyle Lowry, because Tyler Hero is going to be starting now, most likely for the foreseeable future. Along with Jimmy and Bam in the lineup. Kevin Love was retained, so various roster things. Jaime Jaquez, who I'm extremely excited about going into this season. I think he's going to be a really good rookie coming out. I think he might surprise some people with how good he is right away. Haywood Highsmith is the guy that's going to get minutes. Like, this is not a surprise here, because at the end of the day, when it comes to the role players, just on the role player front, Miami is used to letting guys go, because Max Strus and Gabe Vincent were guys that replaced people before them. Like, this is a Miami Heat team that had to recover from the debacle of paying Hassan Whiteside, Dion Waiters, and James Johnson contracts. Oh, what a time that was. And they were able to completely flip it. And how did they flip it? They flipped it by getting Jimmy Butler. And this is a team that is used to having to really fix things on the fly the last couple of years, because at the end of the day, and this is not surprising, they have struck out over the last couple of seasons on certain guys. More specifically in the last, I'll say 2 to 2.5, with Donovan Mitchell, apparently with Kevin Durant on more than one occasion. And then this summer with two guys, Bradley Beal, which that one is fully on Miami. And now this one with Damian Lillard. I know it's very muddled with who to listen to, who to trust on all of this. And because this is all literally, the trade just happened as we were recording this, even less than 24 hours ago. And the more complicated part, I think, is that this specific trade has only been in the works for not even 2 weeks. Because we learned after this trade that only 10 days ago did Damian Lillard and his agent give permission, I don't know if give permission is the proper word, but basically be more open and more willing to have other teams in the conversation, because there was a alleged deal that was close to happening with the Toronto Raptors, although it's Masai Ujiri. So, I mean, people are saying that the trade didn't happen because Dame finally relented to some of Portland's stuff. I think it's more so the fact that I think Toronto is also still being a tough negotiator. But again, neither here nor there. What was the number one thing that I said? Because we talked about this trade not the trade, my bad. The situation a couple months back. And what was my final point about that whole debacle when it was early in the saga, guys? It was, if you have a better deal on the offer, if you're Portland, make the deal. I added a few more. I took out a couple words from my previous statement, but the thing still stood. At the end of the day, to an extent, that was what Miami believed in. Miami believed that it was probably going to get to a point in the negotiation that it was going to be that, hey, if you don't want the deal, you could take someone else's if it's a better offer. That's totally fine. That's what happens in sports at the end of the day, right? If you get the better offer from somewhere else, you get the better offer. Boo-hoo, right? It's up to other people to deal with it. But as far as we know, there was never a chance to up the offer, because according to multiple reports, which God send to Shams for being amazing throughout this entire process, an actual true professional in his craft, unlike certain human beings, Shams and his reporting and what he has been given has noted the fact that early in the process, when it came to Damian Lillard to Miami, the Blazers' demands had them wanting either Jimmy Butler or Bam Adebayo. So Jimmy Butler is untouchable in Miami. I don't know if you guys have realized this. I don't know if you guys watched the playoffs last season. Jimmy Butler was was pretty good in the playoffs last year for the most part.
Bam is untouchable too, right? I feel like he should be at least.
Dame wanted to go to Miami because of Bam.
Yeah.
So it was very clear to the organization from minute one that the Portland Trailblazers were not negotiating this in any way whatsoever with seriousness when it came to Miami. The Portland Trailblazers organization is a C-class organization with a D-class general manager. Joe Cronin, that schmuck, jamoke, other, like, just goof of a general manager, tried to play it this entire time that they were going to get the best trade possible. And really, best trade possible just meant we're not trading you to Miami. You, Damian Lillard, who this entire time has been preaching about loyalty and being loyal to the soil and all that, the one superstar that finally has the demand of, you know what, I want to go to this spot. Anthony Davis wanted to only go to the Lakers. LeBron James, Lord knows he's dictated stuff throughout his career. James Harden, multiple times. Kevin Durant, multiple times. Kyrie Irving, multiple times. A lot of different guys have had the power. And Damian Lillard is the crossroads on it of, no, we're not going to let you. Apparently taking the best deal possible was just not trading you to Miami and figuring it out. And apparently they were somewhat close with Toronto, but again, that's still skewed because how much of that is what they're allegedly saying that was stopped because of conversations with Dame and his agent, or how much of that was Masai Ujiri? Again, Chris, we've discussed this multiple times on the show. Masai Ujiri is not the easiest person to necessarily negotiate with.
Bro, that's another episode for itself.
I know, but just hypothetically, because everyone was talking about how, well, it's the Toronto Raptors package, like OG Anunoby was going to be the main piece in that, and there was going to be at least one other one. The popular one I was hearing was apparently Grady Dick. Okay, how realistic was that?
Like, how much do you really want Dick, bro? Come on.
How much is that people, like, how much was that an actual trade offer that was on the table versus how much is that people doing what they love doing on Twitter, which is playing armchair GM, which is the most annoying thing when it comes to trade speculation on all these superstars. The amount of people that think they are qualified to be armchair GMs, not even real GMs, armchair GMs. Just please, some of you, I wish Twitter X, whatever the heck it's called now, would just deactivate some of you. Not even for trolling, just being utter waste of typing space. Maybe if there were less users on Twitter, I'm convinced we could get more characters per tweet, not just the 140. But irregardless of that, ultimately, this is the thing that I'm going to look at. And through many articles that have since come out, the Heat and Trailblazers spoke about a deal shortly after Lillard made his trade request in July, but communication between the two sides was very limited. This is from a Miami Herald article. By the way, well, snippets of it. I don't have a subscription to them because, I'm sorry, newspapers, I just don't have the income for that. The Trailblazers never re-engaged the Heat before accepting the Bucks offer on Wednesday, which is multiple sources we've seen since this trade happened, saying that the Portland Trailblazers have never recommunicated with Miami to continue the trade negotiations. When asked about the Heat's pursuit of his client, Lillard's agent Aaron Goodwin said to the Herald, "They did everything they could to acquire Dame. It takes two to get a deal done. I appreciate all that Pat, Andy, and Mickey did to try and make this happen." It seems to me at the end of the day that all the Portland Trailblazers wanted to do as this continued was Damian Lillard will never, ever, ever, as some people would say, would never be in a Miami Heat uniform. Okay. Honestly, at the end of the day, pettiness is something that I'm really 50-50 on. In some instances, I appreciate it. I find it funny. In other instances, it's just utterly stupid. And how about you be a professional and do your job? I've said this about players too. We have criticized James Harden and Zion Williamson and Kyrie and the likes on this podcast in the past. So I like to think that this show as a whole is pretty even-keeled when it comes to looking at this stuff and being like, all right, what the heck is happening? But it's just funny to me, and this is why I mentioned NBA Twitter before, that of all the superstars that have finagled their way out of situations or that have complained about things, the guy who everyone for not a decade, but for 5 years has said, Dame, if you want to get a trade, be traded, bro. We don't care. Have you two not seen the amount of times on Instagram comment sections and Twitter, people are like, bro, I don't care where Dame goes, just let him get out of Portland. But suddenly, he wants to go to a specific team. And all of you come out with your heads on fire.
No, not Miami. Isn't it?
Like, bro, this whole debacle, again, this is why I think we need a separate episode about this, because the way that this saga exposed the cesspool known as NBA Twitter and exposed what is the sports media being played by the powers that be in sports, I think deserves a lot of conversation. But let me try to keep it to the trade itself. I'm trying my best here. At the end of it, and yes, to your questions, Chris, Are the Heat losers in this? Yes. I don't think we're in as bad as a shape as a lot of people think. I was just naming out the depth chart. I think this is still a 45-win team. I think this is still at best, 5th seed in the East if we get lucky. But realistically, I think I'll say this. I don't think this should have been an 8th seed this season to begin with. I think we'll be the 6th seed, maybe 5th seed at best next season. And even if we had Dame, I would have said 3rd seed at best, because I still think in the regular season, there's a gap between the Bucks and the Celtics. Again, even pre-trade. But let me get to the Portland Trailblazers. So this was the crux of the Trailblazers thing. Well, at the end of the day, we just didn't really like the assets Miami gave. Again, if you commit logic to it, it would be, in theory, understandable. But you're telling me a 33-year-old point guard who's been talking about retirement for the last year, and that just got torched in the playoffs, by the way, for 2 to 40 points per game from the best player on the opposing team. A second-round power forward and a center who is overrated, who whines and complains when he's being pushed by a coach, which, I mean, maybe it's a good thing he's going to Portland because Chauncey Billups ain't pushing anybody, and just literally complained his way out of a championship caliber team who, when the task was on him to play against the best team in the league, put up 12 points and 9 rebounds a game in the postseason? He only played in 5 of the 6 games in that Nuggets-Suns series. That's better than a 20... And also, you mentioned the picks, Chris. Pick swaps are useless. The Bucks are still going to have a first-round pick that year, right? The Bucks gave up unilaterally, definitively, 1 guaranteed first-round pick that is properly being transferred to Portland. The other 2 are pick swaps, which it would not surprise me with the C-class organization if they're still somehow worse than the Bucks in 2028 and 2030. So basically, you got a 33-year-old point guard who is not going to be on the team, and consider what you just barely traded Dame for. You're not going to get a lot back for Jrue Holiday, because if we're going by the law of returns here, you should not, on paper, get back more for Jrue Holiday than you did for Damian Lillard. That just doesn't exist. And especially, people are willing to take the Dame contract because that's Damian Lillard. He just came off of, 29 points per game last season? Jrue Holiday, as good as he was last season, he's making $30+ million over the next 2 years. Would you want that on the Knicks, either of you? I think the answer would be no. Like, you got a 33-year-old, 1 guaranteed first-round pick, a second-round power forward, and by the way, second-round power forward from this past draft. This ain't even a guy who's been in the league for 3-4 goddamn years. This is just a recent power forward. And a center who, I'm going to say this right now, I don't even care if people think I'm overreacting. I thought this since the end of the postseason. DeAndre Ayton's not a top 10 center in the game. He's not. He cries, he moans, he complains. He's tall. He's the definition of you made the NBA because you're tall. And that's it. That is what you got back for Damian Lillard. You rejected the potential offer. Not even rejected the offer, because now there's rumors that apparently Miami was preparing one last bigger offer to them. Again, it's very tough because this news literally just broke. But stay with me on at least I'm not even going to name all of them. Let me just give you the top 3 to 4 assets that Miami could have offered. 3 clean first-round picks, which I'm not going to lie, was actually more than I thought we had. But apparently the max Miami could have put in this trade was 3 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps. 3 natural first-round picks, all yours, compared to 1 first-round pick that's yours and 2 pick swaps. Which sounds better? Tyler Hero, 20 points per game, prime of his career. You didn't want him? Totally fine. You don't want an extra guard. Miami already had a 3rd and even a 4th team in place to send Tyler Hero somewhere else and to take the Nurkic contract off their hands. The whole thing, people think the Miami trade was only going to be a 1v1. No, this was always going to be a 3 to 4 team trade no matter where Damian Lillard was going. So it was all set. That was going to be in place. You have the choice between multiple younger assets. Nikola Jovic, okay, you don't like him. Jaime Jaquez Jr. Fun fact, actually, that I learned about via going through Twitter. Apparently, the first-round pick that we had was potentially at some point, I don't know if it was this season or a previous season, could have been the Trailblazers' first-round pick. But, of course, multiple things happened, protections, etc. It ended up Miami was able to keep this pick. You could have gotten the player you were actually always supposed to get, Portland. This first-round pick could have been the Trailblazers' pick in some way, shape, or form. I forget because we made so many first-round pick trades the last couple of years that, you forget the order. But I saw that this could have been the Blazers' first-round pick if certain things had happened in terms of, all the trades. So you could have gotten the guy that you probably should have gotten in Jaime Jaquez Jr. You're talking about a 3/4 that could play with your young core of Anthony Simons, of, as you guys mentioned, Scoot Henderson, and Shaedon Sharpe. Oh, my God. Oh, damn. Shaedon Sharpe is on this team, too. I really understand why you didn't want Tyler Hero. No, I'm not complaining. But you took Jrue Holiday? Jaime Jaquez Jr. is a first-round pick. The Kamara kid in this trade. His last name's Kamara, right? Or am I confusing it? whatever.
It is.
Okay.
I think.
All right. Tumani, I think was his first name. But you took a second-round power forward over a first-round power forward. Good job there, buddy. And then, like I said, do I really need to mention DeAndre Ayton again? 12 points and 9 rebounds per game in the most important series of his team season. You want that on your team? You want the guy that complains about not getting the ball enough? Yes, because totally DeAndre Ayton is going to get the ball next to Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, and Shaedon Sharpe. He's totally going to get the ball when those three guys are running the offense because, Portland is totally going to be willing to make a big man the center. Oh, no, wait, Chauncey Billups is a point guard. Yes, because totally a former point guard head coach is going to run the team by his center. Yes, that is a total reality happening. And again, the other potential assets that may or may not have been on the table, let's just look at it. Again, Jaime Jaquez Jr., better than the second round power forward you got. Caleb Martin was apparently going to be at some point, could have been in the final offer if Portland had called back. And this is my thing at the end of all this, is that I can more than accept the fact that with Bradley Beal, we screwed up. I can more than accept the fact that we just didn't have enough to get Kevin Durant. I can more than accept the fact that with Donovan Mitchell, I don't really think we were that real of a player to begin with because Danny Ainge ain't training with Pat Riley. But I cannot accept the fact that you were going to tell me with a straight face that this was a better trade offer than the max that Miami could, or close to the max that Miami could have gone back to you with if you ever called back. This is why I have said C-class organization, D-class GM. Didn't even call back the team. Fuck you. Pathetic organization.
Wow. What a send-off. Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't have said it any better than that, Jurg. Gonna be interesting. This upcoming week, before media day. I mean, I think an Eastern Conference team needs to go hard for Jrue Holiday. They have to at this point. I mean, like Jurg, I've seen the Miami Heat as like possible destinations for Jrue Holiday. A, would you want that? B, would they do business with Portland? I mean, they kind of like fucked them over.
I don't know. This is the thing. Andy Ellsberg might be willing to do it. Maybe the Arisons. Because here's the thing that a lot of people don't know about the Miami Heat's like power structure in terms of decision making. There's 5 guys that get a vote in key critical decisions. It's Pat Riley, it's Mickey Arison, it's Nick Arison, it's Andy Ellsberg, and it's Eric Spoelstra. And it does not matter if Pat Riley says yes to something. If he's outvoted, he's outvoted. It's not happening. I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like, there's a legitimate, like, Miami, like an actual organization, lets the main guys do the talking. I think Andy Ellsberg would be willing to do it. I think Eric Spoelstra would welcome Jrue Holiday. I think the deciding thing would be one of, like, the two Arisons, the owner and his son. Because I think Pat Riley basically said to Joe Cronin what I just said to finish off my points there. Pat Riley literally told Tom Thibodeau to get his house in order. He added an extra curse in there, but I'm trying to be clean for the people. He told Tom Thibodeau to get his house in order. He basically told Danny Ainge to go F himself in the past. Like, Pat Riley is very much as old school gets. And he, like, would he maybe be willing to do it? I don't know. But then again, if you're Miami, then you need to do the math of, even if you're able to get, because I think the number one thing for Miami is they want to get out of Kyle Lowry's deal. Like, that was the whole point of, that was going to be the main salary filler in this trade involved in Dame. Not saying that Lowry would have maybe gone to Portland. Maybe he would have gone to the 3rd or 4th team. But now you're going to welcome back another point guard that's making $30+ million a year in his 30s. Because for all the things we're saying about Kyle Lowry, were we saying all this about Kyle Lowry before last season? Or was it amplified by his performance throughout last regular season? I think it was more amplified than anything. And now if you're the Heat, do you just want to retack on another year? Like, Jrue Holiday is basically the Kyle Lowry age and the fear that he might drop off like Lowry did. I did not hear anyone criticizing Kyle Lowry like this before last season. I just didn't. And now do you want to take that risk if you're Miami? I just don't know. Are you saying, Chris, would I personally want Jrue Holiday? Then I wouldn't mind Jrue Holiday. But now you're telling me we have to deal with the D-class GM again. We got to deal with the C-class organization again. And if Tyler Hero wasn't good enough for Damian Lillard, let me just break the news to you right now. Tyler Hero ain't going for Jrue Holiday either. If you thought, if Joe Cronin thought that Pat Riley was being difficult with him for the Damian Lillard conversations, old buddy, old pal, old friend. You ain't getting shit for Jrue Holiday if you try to come with Miami with that. So again, I don't think Portland's even going to call Miami about Jrue Holiday. I really don't. I think it's going to be Chicago. I think it's going to be the Clippers. If I'm the Clippers, I am trying to make this call happen by the end of the day. Because I know you mentioned the East here, Chris, and I think you mentioned it because, good Lord, the top team in the Eastern Conference is Milwaukee for the next 2 to 3 years. But it behooves the team in the West to also go for Jrue Holiday because you have Jamal Murray to deal with. You have Bradley Beal and Devin Booker on the Phoenix Suns. I think it's going to be a Western Conference team that Jrue Holiday goes to. I don't think he's going back East. I think he's staying in the West.
Spurs?
No, here's the thing. I think, imagine, I don't know if I could say they're going to do right by a player because they didn't 100% do that here, but I don't think they're going to send him to a rebuilding team like San Antonio. I think he needs to go to a playoff team. Like all of the teams that were mentioned in the initial report for it, none of the, like at worst, they're a play-in team, which I know we can have the conversation about that, but play-in is still a chance to make the playoffs. I say that as someone whose team won the play-in to make the playoffs. Well, to stay in the playoffs, but the Clippers are not a play-in team. The Clippers, if
I don't know what the Clippers are,
but if allegedly Kawhi Leonard is finally going to play this season, which he said he might, and if Paul George is able to play, and remember, there's the new rule now about like players sitting out too much. Like, so I mean, it's going to force them to play, which I know is just a big loss for Paul George because he wants to host his podcast as much as possible. But if you're the Clippers, you got to make a push for this. Like Jrue Holiday, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard. That's a really good trio. I'm not going to say that's a big three because I think we throw that term out way too much.
Yeah.
Because like people were saying that the Bucks have a big three now. No. They have a dynamic duo plus one. I'm sorry, Chris Middleton ain't a big three. He's just not.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm the Clippers, I'm going for that, man. Like if Jalen Brunson was like a 6'6" shooting guard, if I was the Knicks, I would go for that.
The Knicks, okay. I mean, I've seen.
I said if Brunson was a shooting guard, but he's not.
But I do think he would be a decent fit next to Brunson, and I know Tibbs would fucking like just lose his shit for Jrue Holiday, but it depends what the cost is, man. I'm seeing some absurd trade packages, bro.
Well, it's Joe Cronin, so you know he's gonna ask for RJ Barrett from you guys.
Well, then we're done here. I'm not giving you no. You're getting scraps and a pick, and you'll like it, bro.
I'm just telling you, as someone whose team just dealt with this Jamoke, like that's what he's going to ask for.
But you got Heat taxed. I mean, there's a Knicks tax too, but I mean, who knows?
Yeah, we apparently got taxed for making the finals last season and just being better than 28 other teams and all of these crybaby. The one person that I've seen see the light about this is actually a close friend of mine who's a Celtics fan. He literally texted me, bro, it's over for us. Neither of us are winning the East next season. He didn't even taunt me. He loves to give me shit for stuff like this. He didn't even taunt me. He said, yeah, no, bro, neither of us are winning the East next year. Like, do you know how badly you screwed up to make friends not taunt each other for a trade like this? Do you not understand what this has done? Like, and again, my ultimate point. I said the whole time, if you got the better trade package, cool. Didn't get the better trade package. That's why this is irritating to me. You did not get the better trade package. You did not. Tell me right now this is a better trade package than 3 bona fide first-round picks, a 20-point-per-game scorer, which you could have flipped for at least one more first-round pick. Like, if you're Portland, why would you want any role players? Newsflash, you weren't good with Dame the last 2 years. What makes you think trading him will make you good? Just, again, C-class, D-class, whatever you want to call them. This is a joke of an organization. I'm so glad I don't have to be a fan of a poverty franchise like this and be a part of a poverty fan base like that.
Well, what a segment. Yeah, perfectly said, Jurg. Okay, let's move on to our last segment, which is Clowns and Crowns for NFL Week 3.
Oh, finally something good on this show. Goddamn.
Dame, let me start off with you because I think we should give Jurg a break here. Let's start off with Crowns. Who do you have for your Crown of the Week?
My Crown of the Week's going to go to Keenan Allen. It seemed, I don't know who won against him in fantasy. I didn't in any league, and I have a lot of leagues, thank goodness. But I think he had like 50-something points. Where's the stats exact? I think he had 18 catches. Hold on, sorry. All right. So Keenan Allen had 18 catches for 215 yards, and that was without a touchdown. So if you face him in fantasy, you kind of got lucky because you would think that if a guy has 18 catches, you'd have a touchdown. But, knowing that Mike Williams went down, Keenan Allen stepped up, and a lot of people would talk about how injury-prone he is. And, he is. And who knows what happens the rest of the season, but he stepped up big time in this game. knowing the Chargers had to win this game, obviously they couldn't go down 0-3. So not only does Justin Herbert have a game, but Keenan Allen really stepped up. I mean, 18 catches is nuts.
Yeah. For my crown of the week, and we really didn't talk about this game, but we will talk about this team eventually. But this is a player on the team who beat that team. That's not clear at all. But my crown of the week is Josh Dobbs of the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals defeated the Cowboys 28-16. But Josh Dobbs, so easy to root for, man. I'm just kind of happy for him. He was just kind of thrown into the fire. Just knowing the Cardinal situation. 17 for 21, 189 yards, 1 touchdown. Just shout out to him, man. And the merchandise store finally got his jersey in there. So shout out to him, bro. Extremely likable dude. Happy for him. Fuck it. I know you're trying to lose for Caleb Williams, but you're never gonna get flack from me for being the Dallas Cowboys. So my crown of the week goes to Josh Dobbs.
Can we just point out the fact that it's a problem that he has to buy his own jersey and he can't just get one of his own?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how this works.
That's so stupid.
Yeah.
My crown of this week goes to a guy who just absolutely balled out. This is why I love crowns and clowns, because we could give credence to guys who probably don't get a lot of coverage on a daily basis or weekly basis on most other places. But Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins.
Good Lord.
4 catches for 30 yards and 2 touchdowns receiving. And then rushing, he had 18 carries for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. He just absolutely destroyed the Denver Broncos. And it's funny because in that same game, Tyreek Hill went for 157 and a touchdown, and Raheem Mostert had 3 touchdowns, but Achane just he ran all over them. Salute to that man. You could give the Dolphins a crown as a whole, but I want to specifically give him a crown because I don't know how many more games he will earn a crown. The Dolphins will probably give at least a crown or 2 this season offensively, so he deserves a crown.
Jurg, your clown of the week.
The Portland Trailblazers. No, I could give. See, here's the thing. I feel like we're all in agreement on one specific clown. There is a clown we can all give this week. I think we can all agree, and that is ultimately the Denver Broncos. But I want to be a little bit different because I'm also assuming one of you guys has that as a crown this week, or as a clown this week. Excuse me. So my clown for this week will honestly just be, I hate to do this to my boy, but actually I don't hate to do this at all because this is actually just extremely funny. But it is the Dallas Cowboys. How do you lose that game? How do you ruin the tank bowl? How do you ruin my dream? I've had a lot of dreams get dashed this week, guys. And the biggest one of them all wasn't even Dame to Miami. It was the 0-15 versus 0-15 Bears-Cardinals game that would have happened late in the season. I feel a little bit empty inside that we lost the chance at that game. And I need to rely on more 0 whatever matchups to carry me through. And we have two of those coming up with Broncos, Bears, and Vikings, Panthers. I need more of that in my life. I need the tank bowls in my life because right now everything else is going downhill.
All right, my clown for the week is Justin Fields. He was supposed to show up this week, especially after the press conference last week, and they only put up 10 points. His career is in jeopardy. Well, his career with the Bears is in jeopardy, which actually might be a W, but he didn't show up. I have now done a 180 on him because I was actually higher on him than most, but he let me down this week. He gets clown of the week. Dame?
MVP of clowns is Justin Fields, I see. He got one every week so far. But my clown of the week is going to go to Sean Payton. This guy was talking about how much of a disaster the coaching position was last year with Nathaniel Hackett, my offensive coordinator. And I wasn't big on Hackett, but I mean, you can't go out and say these things, how the team wasn't good because of the coaching, how awful the coaching was, and then you go out and you play the Dolphins and you give up 70 points. And at the same time, you give up 70 points, you play your starting quarterback who you're paying $1 billion for all 100% of the snaps. Xavier Howard came out and said that was just ridiculous, and I think it is. I mean, there's no reason. Although I obviously don't think Russell Wilson is good, he is your quarterback right now. He's your starting quarterback. He's a guy you knew when you took the job was going to be your starting quarterback going forward, and you're playing him 100% of the snaps and your team's down 50. That just is absolutely awful and irresponsible.
All right. What an episode. My God. Yeah. News all around. Stuff to talk about. Jurg, where can they find us on the socials?
Guys, you already know where you can find us on the socials at somewhat.sports on Instagram for all of the Somewhat Sports goodness that you get. You get the weekly predictions that we will be having throughout the NFL season. Damon and I tied last week, so I think me and him are towards the top of the leaderboards so far in our weekly pick predictions. Who will be at the top by the quarter mark of the season? You got to keep up with the show to figure that out. And of course, we also post way more. We always update when the show is posted on YouTube and Spotify. And we're also going to be, as I said, we're going to be talking about NBA standings here in the next couple weeks. We will be giving our full 1 through 10 predictions and breakdowns here, and probably will warrant a post on the page itself. And of course, I just mentioned the YouTube and Spotify, Somewhat Spaced in Sports, to find us on those 2 outstanding audio and video platforms. Like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more on there. And of course, give us 5 stars, leave a like and review on Spotify. Let us know what you love about the show. I feel like people are either going to love or hate what has been talked about this week on the show, particularly certain portions of it. But hey, that's what we're here for, because the Somewhat Sports Podcast, the best podcast, if I do say so myself, in the sports media landscape today, is just continuing to go. Autumn is here. The season of fall is upon us, but the Somewhat Sports Podcast will rise, as always.
Beautifully put as always, Jurg. Beautifully put as always. To both of you, thank you for steering the ship with me. You did awesome as always. To all the listeners listening, if you made it this far, we appreciate you. And until next time, peace.